The zip ties cut into Kevin's wrists as airport security pressed his face against the filthy jet bridge carpet. Blood pooled from his split lip, his $300 hoodie torn, his billion-dollar empire reduced to this moment of ultimate humiliation. Behind the sealed cabin door flight attendant, Jennifer celebrated her victory, completely unaware that she had just brutalized the man who could obliterate her airline with a single phone call. Captain Miller straightened his tie, satisfied he'd removed another troublemaker. But as Kevin lay there, tasting blood and concrete, his fingers found his phone. What Jennifer and Miller didn't know was about to destroy everything they'd ever worked for. The most expensive 45 minutes in aviation history were about to begin. It wasn't a pilot strike. The entire collapse of a legacy airline happened because a flight attendant named Jennifer decided she didn't like the look of the man sitting in seat 1A. She saw a black man in a hoodie and headphones and assumed he was a nobody who snuck into first class. She didn't know she was looking at Kevin Marshall, the man who owned the bank that held the airline's debt. She dragged him off the plane. He dragged her company into the ground. This is the story of the most expensive mistake in aviation history. JFK Airport Terminal 4. It was raining, a miserable gray sheet of rain that delayed everything and put everyone on edge. Inside the first-class lounge, however, the air was still and smelled of expensive cologne and espresso. Kevin Marshall sat in the corner, far away from the buffet and the bar. To the untrained eye, Kevin looked like he was lost. He was wearing a charcoal gray, oversized hoodie, black joggers that had seen better days, and a pair of beaten-up Nike Dunks. He had massive noise-canceling headphones over his ears and a baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't looking at a laptop. He was staring out the window at the tarmac, exhausted. He had just spent 72 hours in intense negotiations in Silicon Valley. Kevin was the CEO and founder of Obsidian Holdings, a private equity firm that didn't make the news because they owned the news. He had just closed a deal to acquire a majority stake in a semiconductor manufacturer that supplied chips to Tesla and Apple. He was worth, conservatively, $9 billion. But right now, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a guy who just wanted to sleep for 6 hours on his way to London. He picked up his boarding pass flight, 492 to Heathrow, seat 1A, clears throat. He had bought the ticket, full price, $14,000, specifically because he needed the privacy of the bulkhead seat. He waited until the final boarding call to get on the plane, hoping to avoid the crowds. As he walked down the jet bridge, he pulled his phone out. He had one unread text from Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. It read, "Deal is funded. Congratulations, Kevin. Get some rest." Kevin smiled, pocketed the phone, and stepped onto the plane. The cabin was pristine. The soft blue LED lighting of Sky-High Airlines was meant to be calming, but the atmosphere was tense. The flight was fully booked, and the crew looked harried. Kevin found seat 1A, tossed his battered leather duffel bag into the overhead bin, and sat down. He immediately reclined the seat, pulled his hood up, and closed his eyes. He didn't want a pre-flight champagne. He didn't want a hot towel. He wanted unconsciousness. He was just drifting off when he felt a sharp tap on his shoulder. Kevin ignored it. He assumed it was accidental. Then a harder tap, a poke. Kevin slid one ear up off and opened one eye. Looming over him was a flight attendant. Her name tag read Jennifer. She had a tight, forced smile that didn't reach her eyes, and her posture was stiff with aggression. "Sir," Jennifer said, her voice loud enough that the rest of the first-class cabin could hear. "I need to see your boarding pass." Kevin blinked, his voice raspy, from lack of sleep. "I showed it at the gate. Is there a problem?" "The problem," Jennifer, clears throat, said, glancing at his hoodie and then down at his sneakers, "is that we have a discrepancy in the manifest. I need to see your ticket now." She didn't say please. Kevin sighed. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the crumpled slip of paper, and handed it to her. Jennifer snatched it, staring at it intensely, hoping to find a flaw. She typed something into the tablet she was holding. The light from the screen illuminated her frowning face. "Kevin Marshall," she read aloud. She looked at him again, her eyes narrowing. In her mind, Kevin Marshall didn't look like a guy in a hoodie. In her mind, a Kevin Marshall who could afford Seat 1A was an older white man in a suit or maybe a celebrity rapper. This guy just looked like trouble. "Is everything all right?" Kevin asked, his patience already thinning. "No," Jennifer said, straightening up. "It's not. I'm going to need you to gather your things and follow me to the galley." "Why?" "Because, sir," she said, putting a sarcastic emphasis on the word sir, "this seat is double booked. And per airline protocol, we prioritize our Diamond Medallion members. And since I don't see a diamond status on your profile, you're in the wrong seat." "I paid $14,000 for this seat," Kevin said calmly. "I'm not moving." "You paid," Jennifer scoffed. "Or you used miles, or maybe an employee pass. I paid cash. Amex Centurion." Kevin said, putting his headphones back on. "Check your tablet again, Jennifer. I'm sleeping." He closed his eyes. That was the moment the fuse was lit. Jennifer wasn't used to being dismissed, especially not by someone she deemed below the standards of her cabin. She turned on her heel and marched toward the cockpit. Kevin didn't see it, but the man across the aisle in seat 1B did. It was an elderly British man named Arthur Sterling, a retired barrister. Arthur watched the interaction with a frown. He leaned over. "Young man," Arthur whispered. Kevin opened his eyes again. "Yeah, she's bringing the captain," Arthur warned. "I've flown this route for 20 years. Jennifer is difficult. Be careful." Kevin gave a tired nod. "Thanks, but I'm not moving." 2 minutes later, the cockpit door opened. Out stepped Captain Miller. Miller was a man who clearly loved the authority of the uniform. He was broad-shouldered, with silver hair, and a face that was currently red with irritation. He had a flight to fly, and Jennifer had told him that a belligerent passenger was refusing to follow crew instructions. Miller marched up to seat 1A. Jennifer stood behind him, arms crossed, looking smug. "Sir," Miller barked. Kevin didn't move. He didn't even look up. He just pointed to his headphones. Miller reached down and physically yanked the headphones off Kevin's head. The cabin went silent. Touching a passenger was a major violation, but Miller was the captain. He was God on this plane. Kevin slowly turned his head. His eyes were cold, dark, dangerous. The kind of eyes that had stared down SEC regulators and hostile board members. "You have 3 seconds to give those back," Kevin said softly. "I am Captain Miller. You are delaying my aircraft." Miller spat. "We have a VIP passenger, Mr. Bryce Easton, who needs to be accommodated in first class. We're overbooked. You have been selected to be deplaned." "Deplaned?" Kevin asked. "Not even downgraded to coach. You're kicking me off." "Coach is full," Jennifer interjected. "You need to leave. We can book you on the flight tomorrow morning." Kevin looked past them. Standing near the galley was Bryce Easton. Kevin recognized him instantly. Bryce was a 20-something social media influencer, the son of a minor senator from Connecticut. He was wearing a loud Gucci tracksuit and was currently filming the entire thing on his phone, snickering with his girlfriend. "Let me get this straight," Kevin said, his voice rising slightly, allowing the other passengers to hear. "You want to kick me off a full fare-paying customer so you can give my seat to the senator's kid. It's random selection." Miller lied. "And you are becoming a security threat." "I haven't raised my voice. I haven't stood up." Kevin said, "I'm sitting here. You are the one shouting captain. We have the right to refuse service to anyone who does not comply with crew instructions." Jennifer shouted. "You are disrupting the flight." "I'm disrupting the flight because I exist in this seat." Kevin counted. He looked at Captain Miller. "Captain, I'm going to give you a chance to save your career. Walk away. Let me fly." "We forget this happened." Miller laughed. It was a cruel, arrogant laugh. "Save my career, son. I've been flying for 30 years. I don't take orders from hoodlums in sweatpants now. Are you walking off, or are we dragging you off?" Kevin reached into his pocket. "He's got a weapon." Jennifer shrieked, jumping back. Panic rippled through the cabin. People gasped. Kevin slowly pulled out his phone. He held it up. "I'm checking the time. It is 8:15 p.m. I have a meeting in London at 9 a.m. I am not leaving." He unlocked his phone and opened his contacts. He scrolled past Oprah Winfrey, past Tim Cook, and hovered his thumb over a contact labeled Victor Vance, Chief Counsel. "Put the phone away," Miller ordered. That is a violation of federal aviation regulations. Calling my lawyer is not a violation, Kevin said. That's it, Miller said. He keyed his radio on his shoulder. Security to the aircraft. We have a level 3 disturbance in first class row 1, requesting immediate removal. The elderly man in 1B, Arthur, stood up. Captain, this is absurd. The man has done nothing wrong. I will volunteer my seat if it stops this. Sit down, sir, Miller snapped at Arthur. Or you'll be off too. Arthur sat down, looking pale. Kevin looked at Arthur. Don't worry, Kevin said effortlessly. Stay seated. I want to see how far they take this. They're calling airport police, Arthur whispered. They won't be gentle, I know, Kevin said. He looked at Jennifer, who was smiling triumphantly. Jennifer, Kevin said calmly. Do you know who owns Sky High Airlines? Jennifer rolled her eyes. It's a public company. Shareholders own it now. Shut up. Technically true, Kevin nodded. But do you know who owns the convertible bonds that kept this airline from going bankrupt during the pandemic? Do you know who basically owns the mortgage on this specific plane? I don't care, she sneered. You should, Kevin said. Because you're about to meet him. Heavy, clear-throat footsteps thundered down the jet bridge. 3 airport security officers squeezed into the plane. They weren't regular police. They were private security contractors hired by the airport authority. They were big, wearing tactical vests, and they looked bored and aggressive. Where is he? The lead officer asked. Sat 1A, Captain Miller pointed, refusing orders, hostile, possibly intoxicated. I haven't had a drink, Kevin said. The lead officer didn't ask questions. He didn't de-escalate. He saw a target. He grabbed Kevin by the shoulder of his hoodie. Up now. I am not resisting, Kevin said, clearly raising his hands, but I am not walking. If you want me off, you have to carry me. And remember, there are cameras. He gestured to the rows of passengers behind him. At least 20 phones were raised, recording everything. Have it your way, the officer grunted. He yanked Kevin. The fabric of the expensive hoodie tore. Grab his legs, the officer shouted to his partner. The next 30 seconds were a blur of violence. They didn't just lift him, they struck him. As they tried to pry his hands from the armrests, the lead officer drove his knee into Kevin's ribs. A sickening crack echoed through the quiet cabin. Kevin grunted in pain but didn't fight back. He went limp, dead weight. They dragged him down the aisle. His head bumped against the armrest of seat 3C. His shoe fell off. Get him off my plane, Captain Miller shouted, straightening his tie, as if he had just taken out the trash. Bryce Easton, the influencer, was laughing as Kevin was dragged past him. Bye-bye, broke boy, Bryce jeered. Jennifer slammed the cabin door shut. The second Kevin was cleared from the threshold. Cross-check and prepare for departure, she announced over the PA system, her voice cheerful again. Clears throat. Sorry for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be in the air shortly. Outside on the jet bridge, Kevin was thrown face first onto the dirty carpet. The security officer pressed a knee into his back and tied his wrists. Kevin tasted blood in his mouth. His ribs were on fire, but as he lay there, cheek pressed against the industrial carpet, Kevin Marshall didn't cry. He started to laugh. It snorts, was a low, terrifying chuckle. The security guard leaned down. Something funny, tough guy. Yeah. Kevin wheezed. I just made $52 billion disappear. You're delirious, the guard said. Get him to the holding cell. They hauled him up. As they walked him through the terminal, paraded like a criminal. Kevin's eyes were fixed on the departure board. Sky High Flight 492 was listed as departed. Big mistake, Kevin thought. You should have never closed that door. The holding cell at JFK Terminal 4 was not designed for comfort. It was designed to break spirits. It was a 10 by 10 box of cinder blocks, painted a glossy, nauseating shade of institutional beige. The air was stagnant, smelling of industrial floor cleaner stale sweat and the metallic tang of old adrenaline. Clears throat. Kevin Marshall sat on a metal bench that was bolted to the floor. His hands were still zip-tied behind his back, the plastic biting deep into his wrists, cutting off circulation to his thumbs. Every breath was a labor. The knee to his ribs had done damage, likely a fracture, possibly a break. When he inhaled, a sharp, jagged spike of pain radiated from his left side, wrapping around his chest like a tightening wire. He tasted copper. He spat onto the concrete floor, a glob of blood. Across the room, the lead security officer, whose badge identified him as Sergeant Kowalski, sat behind a scuffed metal desk, typing slowly on a keyboard that clacked loudly in the silence. Kowalski was a man who had peaked in high school football and had been chasing that feeling of dominance ever since. He didn't look at Kevin. To him, Kevin was just another disruptive passenger, another drunk or drug addict who couldn't handle his liquor at the airport bar. Name Kowalski grunted, not looking up from his screen. Kevin stared at the water stain on the ceiling. He regulated his breathing. In for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. It was a technique he used during hostile takeovers. Pain was just data. Humiliation was just leverage. I asked for a name, Kowalski said louder this time, swiving his chair around. The leather creaked. I want my phone call, Kevin whispered. His voice was a rasp, dry and weak. Kowalski laughed. It was a wet, phlegmy sound. You watch too many movies, pal. This isn't the precinct. This is airport detention. We process you. We ban you from the terminal, and then we hand you over to the NYPD. They're stuck in traffic on the Van Wyck, so you're mine for at least an hour now. Name. I am injured, Kevin said, lifting his chin slightly. Your men assaulted me. I require medical attention. Clears throat. You fell, Kowalski said, bored. I saw the report. Subject tripped while resisting removal. That's what happened. Kevin closed his eyes. He visualized the organizational chart of Sky High Airlines. He visualized the debt tranches. He visualized the face of the CEO, Richard Sterling. No relation to the passenger, a man Kevin had met at a fundraiser in the Hamptons 2 years ago. Richard had been arrogant, then bragging about cost-cutting measures. Cost-cutting measures like hiring cheap security contractors, Kevin thought. Last chance, Kowalski said, standing up. He walked over to the cage, grabbing the bars. Give me a name, or I clears throat book you as John Doe, and you sit in Rikers for the weekend until a judge figures out who you are. Kevin opened his eyes. The darkness in them made Kowalski pause. My name, Kevin said, articulating every syllable with icy precision, is Kevin Elias Marshall. And if you do not cut these ties off my wrists and hand me my phone in the next 60 seconds, you will not just lose your job, you will be named personally in a lawsuit that will take your pension, your house, and your future. I am not threatening you, Sergeant. I am advising you. Kowalski blinked. He looked at the man in the torn hoodie. He saw the blood on the lip. But then he looked closer. He saw the watch on Kevin's wrist. It had been hidden by the sleeve earlier. It was a PC Philippe Nautilus Platinum. It cost more than Kowalski would earn in 20 years. A seed of doubt was planted in the sergeant's stomach. Marshall, Kowalski muttered. He walked back to the computer. He opened a browser window and typed in the name, Kevin Marshall. The first image that popped up was Kevin on the cover of Forbes. The headline read, The Quiet Killer, How Kevin Marshall Became Wall Street's Most Feared Operator. Kowalski's face went slack. He looked at the screen, then at the man in the cell, then back at the screen. The net worth was listed in the sidebar. $9.2 billion dire. Kowalski swallowed hard. His mouth suddenly felt very dry. He stood up his keys, jingling nervously in his hand. He walked to the cell door, unlocking it with a fumble. Kowalski stammered. He walked behind Kevin and used a pair of cutters to snip the zip ties. Kevin brought his arms forward, groaning as the blood rushed back into his numb hands. He rubbed his wrists. They were raw and bleeding. My phone, Kevin said. He didn't say thank you. Kowalski grabbed the iPhone from the evidence bag and handed it over like it was a holy relic. Sir, I didn't know. The airline said, Quiet, Kevin said. He unlocked the phone. 14 missed messages, 3 missed calls. He ignored them all. He went to his favorites and tapped the name Victor Vance. Victor answered on the first ring. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Friday, but Victor Vance never slept. He was the general counsel for Obsidian Holdings, a man who was paid $7 million a year to be a shark in a suit. Kevin. Victor's voice was sharp. You're supposed to be in the air. We got an alert that your phone was stationary at JFK. Is everything okay, Victor? Kevin said, his voice deceptively calm. I need you to listen carefully. I am currently in a holding cell at JFK Terminal 4. I have been assaulted by airport security. I have been denied passage on a flight I paid for. I have sustained physical injuries. Jesus Christ, Victor hissed. I'm sending a team. I'll clear's throat, have the NYPD commissioner on the line in 10 seconds. Who did this? Sky High Airlines, Kevin said. Flight 492, Captain Miller, a flight attendant named Jennifer, and 3 contractors. I'll bury them, Victor growled. We'll sue for assault, battery, discrimination, breach of contract. No, Kevin interrupted. No, Victor, that's too slow. Kevin stood up. The pain in his ribs flared, but he used it. It sharpened his focus. We aren't going to sue them for damages, Victor. That small ball. I don't want a settlement. What do you want? Kevin looked at his reflection in the darkened glass of the interrogation room. He looked like a brawler. I want to kill it, Kevin said. I want to kill the airline. Kevin, Victor warned his lawyer, brain engaging. Sky High is a legacy carrier. They're huge. They are leveraged, Kevin corrected. I reviewed their financials last quarter when we looked at that distressed debt bundle. They have $52 billion in market cap, but they are swimming in debt. Their bonds are rated BBB, just one notch above junk status. And guess who holds the controlling interest in the tranche of convertible bonds that come due next month? There was a silence on the other end of the line. The sound of typing. We do, Victor whispered through the shell company in the Cayman's project, Icarus. Exactly, Kevin said. Victor, I want you to execute a margin call on their credit facility. I want you to dump our entire stock position in the after-hours market. I want you to leak the rumor that they are insolvent to the Financial Times. And I want you to do it all before Flight 492 lands in London. Kevin, that's financial warfare. If you dump that much stock at once, you'll trigger a liquidity crisis. You'll wipe out their equity. The stock will crash. I know, Kevin said cold-heartedly. Do it. Initiate the sell order. Burn it down. Clear's throat. Understood, Victor said. And Kevin? Yes. I'm sending the car and a doctor. Don't say another word to the police. Kevin hung up. He looked at Sergeant Kowalski, who was trembling in the corner. You can keep the door open now, Kevin said, sitting back down on the metal bench. I'll wait for my ride here. While Kevin sat in the silence of the cell, 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, Flight 492 was a sealed metal tube of ignorance. Jennifer was serving warm nuts to Bryce Easton in seat 1A. Captain Miller was on autopilot, drinking coffee, thinking about his pension. They had no idea that the world below them was catching fire. It started on TikTok. A passenger in seat 4, see a 19-year-old college student named Sarah Jenkins, had a clear view of the aisle. She hadn't intervened because she was scared, but she had done what her generation did best. She documented. She had recorded the entire interaction. The calm refusal of Kevin, the screeching arrogance of Jennifer, the arrival of the security goons, and most damning of all, the sound of the crack when the knee hit the ribs, followed by the image of Kevin's limp body being dragged down the aisle like a sack of garbage, his shoe falling off. She uploaded the video at 8:45 p.m., just before the plane doors closed, using the last bars of her 5G signal. Her caption was simple. Sky High Airlines just beat up a passenger for no reason. I'm shaking. Sky High assault/T travel nightmare. For the first 20 minutes, the video had a few hundred views. Then, the algorithm grabbed it. At 9:15 p.m., a popular travel blogger on Twitter, The Point Sky, retweeted it with the caption, "This is the most disturbing thing I've ever seen on a plane. War Sky High Airlines, explain this now." At 9:30 p.m., the video hit Reddit's A Public Freakout. It shot to the top of the front page in 12 minutes. But the turning point, the moment this went from a PR incident to a global event, happened at 9:45 p.m. A user on Twitter, named While Wall Street Cynic, an anonymous analyst with 400,000 followers who specialized in identifying corporate executives, paused the video at the 014 mark. He zoomed in on the passenger's face. He zoomed in on the sneakers. He zoomed in on the bag being thrown into the overhead bin. He posted a screenshot with a red circle around Kevin's face. The tweet read, "Holy, what size? Everyone thinks this is just some random guy. Look closer." That is Kevin Marshall, CEO of Obsidian Holdings. Net worth 9 Bass Sky High Airlines just beat up the guy who owns their debt. This isn't a PR crisis. This is a funeral. That tweet was the match in the powder keg. By 10 miles per hour, the internet was in a frenzy after justice, for Kevin was trending 1 in the United States. Boycott Sky High was trending number 2. Yell Sky High was trending number 3. The narrative shifted instantly. It wasn't just police brutality. It was a story of irony. The airline had judged a man by his hoodie, not knowing he could buy the entire airport. It was the ultimate pretty woman revenge fantasy, but with violence. Then, the second wave hit. Bryce Easton, the influencer who took the seat, connected to the plane's onboard Wi-Fi. He was oblivious to the mood on the ground. He thought his fans would find the incident funny. He posted a story to Instagram. It was a selfie of him sipping champagne in seat 1A with the caption, "First class all to myself. Bye-bye drama. Sky Eye treats me right." He had no idea he had just committed career suicide. Within minutes, Bryce's comment section was a war zone. He was doxxed. His father's Senate office phone lines were jammed. Brands that sponsored Bryce Gymshark energy drinks watch. Companies began issuing statements, dropping him immediately. He was being canceled in real time at 35,000 feet, and he couldn't even load the comments fast enough to see it happening, because the plane Wi-Fi was slow. Back on the ground, the video had reached the newsrooms. CNN broke into their regularly scheduled programming. "We are receiving disturbing footage from JFK Airport involving Sky High Airlines and prominent billionaire financier Kevin Marshall. Warning, clears throat. The images you are about to see are graphic in the Sky High Airlines corporate headquarters in Dallas. The lights were turning on. The war room Elena Ritova, the VP of Public Relations for Sky High, was at a dinner party when her phone began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It buzzed so violently it nearly fell off the table. She looked at the screen. 50 missed calls. She answered her deputy Mike. "Mike, I'm eating." "What is it, Elena?" Mike's voice was cracking. He sounded like he was crying. "You need to get to the office now. It's over. It's all over. Calm down." "Did a plane crash?" "Worse," Mike said. "We assaulted Kevin Marshall. It's on video. It has 50 million views in an hour. And Elena, the stock. What about the stock markets are closed?" "After hours trading," Mike whispered. "Someone is dumping massive blocks of shares. Institutional dumping. The price has dropped 18% in 20 minutes. It's a raid. Someone is trying to kill the company." Elena dropped her fork. "Marshall," she whispered. "Get here," Mike said. "The CEO is screaming for you." The internet detectives. The internet didn't sleep. While the executives panicked, the collective intelligence of social media began dissecting the video frame by frame. They identified Jennifer. Within an hour, her Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn were found. People found old posts where she complained about trashy passengers. The Internet Archive was ruthless. They identified Captain Miller. They found his flight records. But the most damaging thing was the juxtaposition. Someone created a split-screen video. On the left, Kevin Marshall being kneed in the ribs and dragged. On the right, Sky High's We Care commercial, featuring smiling flight attendants helping a grandmother with her bags. The caption, "The lie versus the reality." It was the perfect viral storm. Class warfare, race corporate arrogance, and violent retribution all wrapped in a 60-second clip. And in the middle of it all, Kevin Marshall sat in the back of a black Maybach, leaving JFK. He held an ice pack to his ribs. He watched the view count on the video tick up. 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. His phone buzzed. It was Victor Vance. "It's done," Victor said. "We dumped the stock. We triggered the margin clauses on the loans. The news is picking up the insolvency rumor. By the time the market opens on Monday, Sky High will be trading in the pennies. You just wiped out $52 billion in value, Kevin." "Good," Kevin said, looking out the window at the rain. "Now let's see what happens when Flight 49 "Two lands." "The police in London are waiting," Victor asked. "Oh no," Kevin said. "I don't want the police to arrest them. I want the paparazzi to meet them. I want Jennifer and Captain Miller to walk off that plane and see 1,000 cameras flashing. I want them to know the world was watching while they thought they were safe in the sky." "You're a cruel man, Kevin." "I'm a businessman," Kevin replied, "and I'm just collecting my debt. Money usually moves in silence. It flows through fiber optic cables beneath the Atlantic Ocean, invisible and instantaneous." But on this Friday night, money was screaming. It was 2 a.m. in New York. The city was asleep, but the global financial markets were just waking up to the smell of blood. In the office of Victor Vance, on the 45th floor of a skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan, the only light came from the glow of 6 monitors. Victor sat with his tie undone, a glass of scotch untouched on his desk. He wasn't drinking. He was conducting a symphony of destruction. He had the Bloomberg terminal open in front of him. The screen was a wall of data, but he was focused on one ticker symbol, SKH, Sky High Airlines. Because it was the weekend, the main stock markets, NYSE, were closed. But the after-hours markets and the international derivatives markets were open, and they were bleeding. "Execute Phase 2, Victor said into his headset. He was speaking to a trader in Singapore. "Dump the convertible bonds, all of them at market price. I don't care about the loss. Just get them off the books, sir." The trader's voice crackled in his ear, sounding terrified. "If we dump the bonds at this volume, we will crash the bond rating. Sky High's credit spread will explode. They won't be able to borrow money for fuel by Monday morning." "Did I stutter?" Victor asked calmly. "Sell." On the screen, a red line began to form. It was a vertical drop. 2:15 a.m. clears throat. The rumor hit the Bloomberg chat rooms. Rumor Obsidian Holdings is liquidating its entire position in Sky. Solvency concerns. Debt covenants triggered. In the world of high finance, uncertainty is a bullet, but solvency concerns is a nuclear bomb. Clears throat. Hedge fund managers in London, just starting their morning coffee, saw the alert. They didn't wait to check if it was true. They saw Kevin Marshall, the smartest money in the room, running for the exit. If Marshall was selling, you didn't ask why. You sold first and asked questions later. 2:30 a.m. The domino effect began. Computer algorithms designed to protect portfolios detected the massive sell-off. The stop-loss orders kicked in automatically. Machines began selling sky-high stock to other machines, driving the price down faster than any human could track. The stock price, which had closed on Friday at $4,250, was now trading in the dark pools at $28, or $14 billion of value had evaporated in 15 minutes. But Victor wasn't done. He opened a secure email client. He drafted a message to the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, ISDA. He attached the police report of the assault which he had just received from his contact at the NYPD and the loan agreement between Obsidian and Sky High. He highlighted Clause 14, now B, the Material Adverse Change Clause. This clause stated that if the borrower, Sky High, engaged in conduct that materially damaged their reputation or ability to operate the lender, Obsidian had the right to demand immediate repayment of the entire $4.5 billion loan. Victor hit send. He then forwarded the email to the financial editor of the Wall Street Journal. A 3 a.m. the article went live online. Headline exclusive: Obsidian Holdings declares default on Sky Airlines. Debt following CEO assault. This was the kill shot. By declaring a default, Victor had frozen the airline's credit. When the sun rose, Sky High's credit cards wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to pay for jet fuel in Tokyo. They wouldn't be able to pay catering in Paris. They wouldn't be able to pay landing fees in Dubai. Victor leaned back in his chair. He watched the ticker symbol SKH flash red, blinking like a dying heartbeat. 22 BS, 18 to 50 15 ounces. He picked up his scotch and took a sip. It was smooth. That, Victor whispered to the empty room, is for the ribs. Sky High Corporate Headquarters, Dallas, Texas. Saturday, 4:15 a.m. The executive conference room, known as the flight deck, was usually a place of power. It had mahogany tables, leather chairs, and a panoramic view of the Dallas skyline. Tonight, it smelled of stale coffee and fear. Richard Sterling, the CEO of Sky High, stormed into the room. He was wearing a tracksuit over his pajamas. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were wide and bloodshot. Richard was a man who was used to winning. He had built his career on ruthless cost-cutting crushing unions and upcharging for legroom. He believed he was untouchable. "Tell me it's not true," Richard barked, throwing his phone onto the mahogany table. "Tell me we didn't just lose half our market cap because of a viral video." The room was silent. Around the table sat the grim faces of the Sea-White. Elena Rostova, VP, of PR, looking pale and defeated. David Chen, CFO, who was staring at his laptop with his head in his hands. Sarah Miller, head of legal, who was frantically reading through a stack of documents. David, the CFO, looked up. He looked like a man who was watching his house burn down. "It's not just the video," David said softly. "It's the debt." "What about the debt?" Richard snapped. "We have lines of credit. We have liquidity." "Not anymore," David said. He turned his laptop around so Richard could see the screen. Clears throat. Kevin Marshall didn't just get dragged off the plane. He is the majority holder of our Series B convertible bonds, and he just called the loan. Richard froze. "Marshall, the Kevin Marshall. He was the passenger." "Yes," Elena whispered. "Seat 1A. The manifest confirms it. Jennifer, the flight attendant. She didn't know. She thought he was a squatter." Richard sank into a chair. The air left his lungs. "Oh my God." He declared a material adverse change. David continued, his voice trembling. He triggered the cross-default clauses. "Richard, because Marshall called his loan, all our other loans are automatically in default. Bank of America, City Chase. They're all freezing our accounts as we speak. We are technically insolvent. Fix it." Richard slammed his fist on the table. "Call him. Get Marshall on the phone. Offer him a settlement. Offer him free flights for life. Offer him $10 million. Just get him to resend the default notice." "I've tried Sarah," the lawyer said. "I've called his office. I've called his personal lawyer. I've called his home. No one is answering." "Keep trying." Richard screamed. "Do you understand? If we don't fix this before the markets open on Monday, this company ceases to exist. We are Chapter 11 by Tuesday. 40,000 employees gone." He grabbed his own phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found a number he had saved 3 years ago at a charity gala. Kevin Marshall. Personal. He pressed dial. His hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. Ring. Ring, ring. Richard held his breath. Everyone in the room leaned in. Click. "This is Marshall." The voice was deep, calm, and terrifyingly clear. There was no background noise. "Kevin," Richard gasped. "Kevin, it's Richard Sterling from Sky High." "I know who it is, Richard." Kevin said, "I'm watching your stock ticker right now. It's fascinating. You're trading at $12. I think you might be a penny stock by breakfast." "Kevin, listen to me." Richard pleaded, sweating profusely. "This is a terrible misunderstanding. A rogue employee. We are firing her. We are firing the captain. We will issue a public apology. I will personally fly to New York to apologize to you. Please, you have to stop the sale. You're killing the company." There was a pause on the line, a long, agonizing silence. Richard, Kevin said slowly, "Do you know what your captain said to me when I told him I had a meeting in the morning? I don't. He told me he didn't take orders from hoodlums in sweatpants. He told me I was randomly selected to be removed. He watched his security guards break my ribs. Richard, I'm currently sitting in a hotel room with a fractured rib icing my chest." "I am so sorry," Richard stammered. "We will pay." "Name your price." "My price," Kevin chuckled darkly. "Richard, I don't need your money. I have enough money to buy your airline 10 times over. That's the problem you people have. You think everything can be fixed with a check." "What do you want?" Richard whispered. "I want you to feel it," Kevin said. "I want you to feel the helplessness. I want you to sit there in your fancy boardroom and watch your legacy turn to ash and know there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. You took my dignity, Richard. I'm taking your company. Kevin, please think of the shareholders. Think of the employees. You should have thought of them before you built a culture where a paying customer can be dragged out like a criminal because he didn't look the part. Karma is a wheel, Richard, and it just rolled over you. Kevin, click. The line went dead. Richard stared at the phone. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. He's not stopping, Richard whispered, his face gray. He's going to let us die. Elena, the PRVP, stood up slowly. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark sky. Richard, she said softly, it gets worse. How? Richard asked, putting his head on the table. How could it possibly get worse? The plane, Elena said. Flight 492. It's still in the air. Richard looked up. He had forgotten about the plane. It lands in London in 2 hours. Elena said, every news agency in the world is waiting at Heathrow. The BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera. They are all setting up cameras at the arrival gate. They are waiting for Captain Miller and Jennifer to walk off that jet bridge. Does the crew know? Richard asked. Do they know what's happening? No, Elena said. They are over the Atlantic. No Wi-Fi, no news. They think they just kicked off a troublemaker and are having a normal flight. They are going to land, open that door, and walk straight into a firing squad. Richard closed his eyes. He imagined the scene, the flashbulbs, the screaming reporters, the viral clips of his arrogant captain being ambushed by the reality of what he had done. Shut down the terminal, Richard mumbled. We can't, Sarah said. Heathrow is public. We have no control. Then God help them, clear his throat, Richard said. Because I can't. London Heathrow Airport Terminal 3, Saturday 7 a.m., Greenwich Mean Time. The descent had been smooth. Flight 492 touched down on the tarmac with a gentle thud, the tires spinning up a spray of morning mist. Inside the cockpit, Captain Miller felt that familiar sense of satisfaction. He checked his instruments, reversed the thrusters, and taxied toward Gate 22. Good run, Miller said to his co-pilot. We made up time. We're clear's throat. 10 minutes early. Smooth sailing. The co-pilot agreed. Beer at the pub in an hour. You bet, Miller grinned. He adjusted his hat, checking his reflection. He looked like the quintessential captain, authoritative, in control, respected. In the first-class cabin, Jennifer was doing her final checks. She woke Bryce Easton gently. Mr. Easton, she smiled, her voice syrupy sweet. We've landed. Thank you for flying sky high. I hope you enjoyed the service. Bryce yawned, stretching his arms. Yeah, great flight. Hey, thanks for handling that situation earlier. Guy was a creep. We prioritize our VIPs. Jennifer winked. You have a great stay in London. She walked to the cabin door. She felt good. She had asserted her authority, protected the cabin, and maintained the schedule. She was already thinking about the shopping she would do on Oxford Street later that day. The plane came to a complete stop at the gate. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Jennifer unlocked the heavy cabin door. She pushed it open, putting on her best customer service smile, ready to greet the ground staff. She expected a gate agent, maybe a cleaner. Instead, she was blinded. Flash, flash, flash. A wall of white light erupted from the jet bridge. It wasn't one camera. It was 50. The jet bridge, usually empty, was packed shoulder to shoulder. But it wasn't passengers. It was the press, the paparazzi reporters from the BBC, the Daily Mail, Sky News, and CNN. Jennifer stumbled back, shielding her eyes. What? What is this? A microphone was shoved into her face before she could even step off the plane. Jennifer, is it true you racially profiled Kevin Marshall? Did you know he suffered a fractured rib? How does it feel to bankrupt your own airline? Jennifer, look here. Did you enjoy watching him be beaten? Jennifer stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The smile vanished, replaced by sheer, unadulterated terror. Behind her, Captain Miller stepped out of the cockpit, annoyed by the commotion. What is going on here? Clear this jet bridge immediately. This is a secure area. The cameras pivoted to him. The shutter sounds were like machine gun fire. Captain Miller, a reporter from the Sun shouted. Are you aware that Sky High Airline stock has dropped 90% while you were in the air? Miller blinked. What are you aware that Kevin Marshall has called in the debt? "The airline is insolvent, Captain. You flew a dead plane." Miller's face went white. He looked past the reporters. Standing at the back of the scrum were 4 officers from the London Metropolitan Police. They weren't smiling. One of the officers stepped forward, pushing through the press. "Captain Miller, Jennifer Davies," the officer asked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Yes," Miller squeaked. "We need you to come with us. We have been asked to detain you for questioning regarding an assault incident at JFK. And for your own safety, I wouldn't walk through the terminal alone." Miller looked at the cameras, then at the police, and finally at Jennifer. Jennifer was sobbing now, makeup running down her face, hiding behind the galley wall. Bryce Easton tried to squeeze past them, pulling his hood up to hide his face. "Hey, that's Bryce Easton," a cameraman shouted. "The guy who took the seat." Bryce sprinted down the jet bridge, chased by a pack of photographers. He would later be dropped by his agency before he even cleared customs. Miller let out a long, defeated breath. The authority was gone. The arrogance was gone. He was just an old man who had made a very bad mistake. I was just following protocol," Miller whispered. "Tell it to the judge," the officer said. 1 year later, the Skyline Hotel, New York City. Kevin Marshall sat in the penthouse suite. He was wearing a suit, this time bespoke clear's throat, navy blue, perfectly fitted. He looked healthier. The ribs had healed long ago, though he still felt a twinge when it rained. He was sitting across from Oprah. The interview had been anticipated for months. The cameras were rolling. So Oprah said, leaning forward, "It's been a year since the Flight 492 incident. Sky High Airlines is gone. It was liquidated, sold for parts. 40,000 people lost their jobs. The brand no longer exists. Do you feel guilty?" Kevin looked at her. He didn't blink. "Guilt implies I did something wrong," Oprah Kevin said calmly. "I didn't fire those people. Their leadership failed them. Their culture failed them. I simply held a mirror up to their face. If they didn't like the reflection, that's not my fault." "But surely," Oprah pressed, "you could have stopped the financial bleeding. You could have accepted the apology." "I could have," Kevin nodded. "But if I had accepted a settlement, they would have learned that money fixes abuse. They would have done it again to someone else. Someone who didn't have my resources. Someone who couldn't fight back. I didn't destroy Sky High for revenge. I destroyed it to set a precedent." "And what is that precedent?" Kevin smiled. It was the same dangerous smile he had worn in the holding cell. "Respect," Kevin said. "Respect has a price. And if you can't afford to pay it, don't get into the business of selling seats." "Where are they now?" Captain Miller lost his pension in the airline's bankruptcy. He was found liable in civil court for negligence. He currently works as a shuttle bus driver for a rental car company in Florida. He refuses to speak to the press. Jennifer was fired for cause and blacklisted from the aviation industry. She moved back to her hometown in Ohio. She works the night shift at a logistics warehouse. She deleted all her social media accounts. Bryce Easton, his reputation, never recovered. He was branded the seat stealer. He tried to launch a podcast, but it failed. He now works for his father's campaign, largely out of the public eye. Sky High Airlines, the planes were auctioned off. Ironically, Obsidian Holdings bought 20 of the jets at a discount. They were rebranded and leased to a new luxury charter service. The name of the new airline, Karma Air, and on the tail of every plane, painted in small letters near the cockpit, was a simple motto: "All seats are earned." That is the story of how a $14,000 seat cost an airline $52 billion. It sounds like fiction, but the mechanics of it are very real. We live in a world where we judge people by their clothes, their skin color, or their silence. Jennifer and Captain Miller looked at a man in a hoodie and saw a victim. They didn't know they were looking at a king. They forgot the most important rule of business and perhaps of life. Be humble, because you never know who you are talking to. You never know who is sitting in seat 1A, and you never know when the person you drag down is the only one holding you up. Sky High Airlines thought they were too big to fail. Kevin Marshall taught them that no one is too big to fall. If you enjoyed this story of ultimate revenge and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Kevin? Would you have destroyed the airline, or would you have taken the settlement money? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about business battles, corporate downfalls, and sweet revenge, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. I'll see you in the next story. Stay humble.